Welcome to the Jill on Money podcast. I'm your host, Jill Schlesinger. Don't forget, this is where we provide unconventional insights on your money and your life. And boy, we have got a huge treat today. Not one, not two, but three Federal Reserve past chairmen. Yeah, three. So we've got Janet Yellen, Ben Bernanke, and Alan Greenspan. And they're here to help us understand monetary policy, but more importantly, what's going on in the economy. And wait a second. What? What's this, Mark? Stacking Benjamin's podcast? I'm not doing anything with those guys. Hold on.
You're listening to the Journey to Launch podcast, the 4 things you must focus on in order to reach your goals of financial freedom and independence so you can live your best life. Let's get into it.
T-minus 10 seconds.
Welcome to the Journey to Launch podcast with your host, Jamila Souffrant.
Wait, what? Who put my show on the Stacking Benjamins feed? Ugh.
All right, guys. Hello and welcome to the Choose FI Radio podcast. Super excited to dive into this week's content, talking about the sustainable path to FI. So many people in our community are pursuing this very intentional lifestyle and are looking for ways to pursue financial independence and parallel to that, live a lifestyle that's very environmentally friendly. And to help me with this, I have my co-host Brad here with me today. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, Jonathan, I'm doing quite well. And yeah, this should be a really good episode. I've been looking.
Brad, I just realized I think we're on the wrong feed.
What? Seriously?
I don't know how this happens, but I think this is Stacking Benjamins.
Who listens to that show?
I haven't learned anything. April Fools, guys.
Live from Joe's mom's basement, it's the Stacking Benjamin Show. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and sorry about all the confusion, everybody. I just had some trouble with the dials there for a moment. But what a show we had for you today. No more April Foolin here, because on today's show, we welcome author and speaker on productivity and work-life balance, Laura Vanderkam. Plus, in our headline segment, what are full-service advisory clients looking for? We'll ask Mike Foy from J.D. Power and Associates. We'll also celebrate April showers with the Haven Lifeline, answer a letter from the mailbag, and more. And now, two guys who we were all hoping were just an April Fool's joke, but turns out they're really going to be doing this thing. Joe and G.
We are going to do this thing. Hey there, stackers. I'm Joe Salsi High, Average Joe Money on Twitter, and we're not fooling. The guy who's definitely not fooling, Mr. OG.
Except that I'm always fooling.
You really are. Actually, the guy who's...
I mean, everything that I do is a game.
Guy who's rarely serious, Mr. OG. Happy April.
But when I am serious, I am damn serious.
I don't know. What do I do with that?
I don't know.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, you are. Correct.
No help from the peanut gallery for the transitions.
By the way, thanks to Jill Schlesinger, Jamila Souffrant, and our friends Brad and Jonathan at Choose FI for that little chicanery.
It's kind of fun.
It was kind of fun.
Is it kind of weird that April Fool's Day is a Monday? Is that the joke?
I think
that the calendar plays on all of us. Like, it's Monday.
It is funny that it's Monday and I already want to pack my suitcase and go. Like, I'm like, nope.
Yeah.
Not ready to end the weekend now. And by the way, this episode of Stacking Benjamins brought to you by Away. Didn't see that coming, did you?
Oh, nice.
Away makes first class luggage when you want to get away at coach prices that allow you to charge your phone on the go. For $20 off a suitcase, head to awaytravel.com/SB20. Then use promo code SB20. And we just hooked you up with $20 off, and awesome.
These are cool. Cool pieces of gear. I have to tell you about my latest flight. We'll talk about that a little bit later.
Sounds good. Also, thanks to MetPro for supporting Stacking Benjamins. We talked to Angelo from MetPro on Friday, and we're happy that they've come on board to be a sponsor of the podcast for a complimentary metabolic profiling assessment, a 30-minute consultation with a MetPro expert. Go to metpro.co/SB. A great way to go if you're going to, as Angelo said, buy health. Buy your health. We got a great show today. Laura
fooling around.
No, Laura Vanderkam, Mike Foy from JD Power on Dad's Shortwave. So let's get April started.
Hello, darlings. And now it's time for your favorite part of the show, our Stacking Benjamin's headlines.
Our first piece is written by Bruce Kelly and comes to us by way of investmentnews.com, kind of a little inside baseball publication for people in the financial services industries. Securities America, big firm, hit with lawsuit seeking $18 million in damages. Firm is dealing with the fallout from a rogue broker it fired a year ago. They fired this dude a year ago, and they're still being sued for $18 million. Listen to this. Securities America is dealing with the fallout from a rogue broker it fired last year, who was later charged with running a Ponzi scheme. The firm now faces a lawsuit alleging that a family suffered $18 million in losses after working with the advisor since 2001. In December, the broker, Hector A. May, pled guilty in federal court to running a Ponzi scheme. He faces up to 25 years in prison. According to his broker check profile, Mr. May was fired by Securities America 1 year ago after he was accused of stealing client assets. The Jameson family filed the complaint against Securities America, one of the largest independent broker-dealers in the industry. Mr. May in U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York on February 26th. Securities America disclosed the complaint and its claim of $18 million in compensatory damages in the annual audited financial statement it filed at the start of this month with the Securities and Exchange Commission. They didn't respond to a request for comment. Here's what happened, by the way. According to the complaint, Mr. May ran the Ponzi scheme with his daughter, Vania Maybell. Over 17 years, Mr. May, with the assistance of his daughter, stole millions from the Jameson family and repeatedly provided investment advice designed to make it easier for him to steal more, the complaint said. The only reason May and Bell were able to perpetrate a fraud that was breathtaking in scope, the Jameson family was not the only victim, and duration was the abject failure, according to this piece, of Securities America to perform its duties. Actually, not even according to this piece, according to the lawsuit paperwork. The firm failed to supervise. This is what I want to get into, OG. It says the firm failed to supervise the broker properly and ignored, quote, stark red flags that would have exposed the scheme in 2003 at a time when Mr. May stolen only $750,000 from the family, according to the complaint. Here's the issue I want to get into. I want to get into this idea of compliance for just a little bit, because I think a lot of people listening to this don't understand why smart people in the financial planning industry aren't out talking more often. And yet you have all of these voices against them talking about how advisors are bad or talking about how professional advice isn't great. But the people that are really smart in this industry, and there's a ton of them, you never hear from them. And I think, OG, the biggest reason is this thing called compliance. What's the first thing Securities America is going to do with this lawsuit? They're going to make sure that they crack down even more on advisors. And what that means is compliance officers are going to even be more conservative, which means, oh, gee, let's say that you have a compliance officer. Your compliance officer says, yeah, you're not going to tweet. Yeah, you're not going to put anything on Facebook. Yeah, I don't think it. Instagram? Nope, not going to go there. Like for a compliance officer, this becomes a big game of cover your butt.
It's really lowest common denominator, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's just what are the worst things that can happen with a specific thing, or if it already happened, what's the worst thing that happens, and then assume everyone is like that, and then manage to that level. So it's terribly frustrating.
Yeah, and they have to. I mean, if you're being sued for $18 million in damages, you fired the guy a year ago, ostensibly before all of this stuff came out. Obviously, there were years and years and years, and people can go back and say, okay, there were all these years where maybe the writing was on the wall. There were these red flags. I don't know the inside info, but I do know that when I was doing PR for a big company in this space, I was one of the few people that were allowed to talk. And even then, I would get serious pushback about some of the stuff that I said that was nothing, that really was just straightforward advice. Yeah, you probably shouldn't say that. Why shouldn't I say that? Well, because it's just getting close to the line.
Well, and some of it is really a little backwards too. Like, for example, so when I was at a big firm, it was really frustrating because, I mean, some of it was just language too. Like, you couldn't say mutual funds. You could say investment products. Right. You couldn't say ETFs. You could say investment solutions. And it's just weird because
you'd have to use the word consider.
Yeah.
Instead of
remember that? Yeah. Remember, like, writing a financial plan. You should buy $2,500 a month of disability coverage. No. You should consider buying 25. I mean, I guess you should consider it, but it's like the doctor going, "Hey, so you should consider having heart surgery." Like, well, should I do it or not? You should consider angioplasty. Strongly consider.
Right. Because if you decide to do it and it goes bad, we don't want to come back on us with a lawsuit.
Yeah. So insanely frustrating, but it's a double-edged sword. I mean, at the end of the day, what are you going to do? If you're the owner of the company, or you're the head honcho, you're the chief compliance officer, and you got this idiot running around for 20 years stealing money from people,
yeah,
that's bad juju. So you gotta
buckle down,
figure out a way so that it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, prevent the next one. Now, that doesn't have a lot to do with social media. I just thought it was a good time for us to talk about social media because compliance obviously is a good thing. I mean,
you look at things like for example, recommendations. So when you want to get a new roof on your house, you guys, when you lived in Texas, you did a lot of home remodeling, right? And you got a new roof. How did you go about figuring out which company to use? You might have gone on Yelp. You might have asked your neighbor. You might have asked a really close friend, a business associate. Like, hey, I need, you gather some ideas. And then what do? You look them up. You Google them. You go to the Better Business Bureau. You try to find out what you can. I've got these 2 or 3 people that came highly recommended. Now what do I do? Well, in our space, and I get why they do it. I think it's a little, I can see both sides of it. You can't have people tell other people in a public forum what they like or don't like about you.
Not allowed to.
Yeah. It's called a testimonial. So, on LinkedIn, when you go on LinkedIn and there's like Joe was a great leader and he was a really good, you can't do that. You can't say, oh, geez, whatever,
And the bad news is, once again, there's a reason for that. And the reason is that you've got bad apples in the bottom that go, well, hell, it makes it easier for me to steal from people if I get all these
1,000 things here.
Yeah.
So
not good. Very frustrating. When I switched over from the financial advising space to being completely in the financial media space, it was incredibly frustrating.
You're like, mutual fund. And you looked around and nobody came after you. And you're like,
well, no,
Apple stock.
The other side was there's all these financial bloggers and a bunch of them didn't know what they were talking about. And I'm like, how come there's no compliance on this stuff?
Yeah.
Like, there's a wealth of crappy advice, just rotten advice online, no compliance on that. And the smart people have a muzzle on and can't say anything. The responsible people just they've got a compliance officer going, nope, can't do that. And I get it.
I was going to say, it's like if you move to a new state and you go to the DMV and the DMV person says, well, we've got 2 options. The first option is if you get a license, you're going to get a picture taken. We'll be able to record you. You have to drive the speed limit. You have to have insurance. You have to follow all these traffic rules and so on and so forth. The other option is to not have a license. And if you don't have a license, there's really nothing we can do.
Just do whatever you want.
So what would you pick? Like, given the choice, you'd be like, well,
I remember
I'll not do the license part, so I can't get in trouble ever. So I can drive as fast as I want without a license. Yep. Say whatever I want. Speed through stop signs. That's all right.
I remember when I was just making the switch and I read this blogger, pretty big blogger, talking about gold as an emergency fund. It's like, gold is your emergency fund. What are you talking about?
It's awesome.
The guy's like, well, hey, here's how this works. And he goes through this crazy convoluted thing. I'm like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
And then we put him on our podcast and Vincenzo.
Could
Just kidding. This wasn't Len.
It wasn't Len. But I thought that was crazy. Just absolutely nuts.
Happens in every industry.
And in our second headline, J.D. Power out with their latest U.S. full-service investor satisfaction study. And man, is this thing action-packed. We've got a lot to talk about. And on my dad's shortwave to talk about it with us from J.D. Power, it's our friend Mike Foy. How are you, Mike?
Doing great, Joe.
Well, I'm glad you could be here with us. It looks like the fourth quarter of last year really kind of rattled some investors when we look at your survey. A lot of people thinking about maybe getting rid of their financial advisor.
Well, it was interesting because we, as you know, we do this study every year, but it's been a long time since the market conditions were as challenging as they were during last year's study, right? So we were in the field in December. The S&P was winding up a year where it was down over 4%. Volatility in the markets was at a 4-year high. And so coming off of basically a decade-long bull market, a lot of investors were getting a little skittish, and we did see that reflected in our survey, particularly in the area of investment performance satisfaction, which was down very significantly year over year, especially among the more affluent and older investors who have more to lose and less time to make up for losses.
I want to follow up on that point in particular, but before we go too far, this looks at full-service investors. How do you guys define a full-service investor and a full-service investment firm so people know what we're looking at?
Sure, yeah. So these are folks who basically say that they, in their primary investment account, they work with a dedicated financial advisor or team. So they're basically working with an advisor at least on their primary account. Some of them may have secondary relationships that are self-directed, but their primary one, they work with a financial advisor or professional.
And going back to your point, though, about older, more affluent advisors, it looks like from your study, if the advisor does a good job of walking people through it, walking people through their performance, it didn't look like it was as much about performance, Mike, as it was about having an advisor who actually was going to hold their hand.
No, that's exactly right. And we really wanted to look at, what are the things that impacted whether or not, because obviously markets are to a large degree outside of our control, but what were the differences between clients who, while they may have not have been thrilled with their investment performance, were still satisfied with their advisor? And it really came down to communication and transparency. So you hit on the explaining performance issue. Probably a subject that advisors would rather avoid in some cases in a difficult market, but we find consistently that clients whose advisors do take the time to explain their performance are much more satisfied, much less likely to say they're considering leaving, much more likely to say that they would recommend them to somebody. So the explanation of performance is a huge issue. And then the other things that we saw that were most critical were really related. So discussing market trends. Did they just have a sufficient overall level of communication from their advisor? Did their advisor respond to them, a question or a call from them the same day that they made it? And then finally, were they providing the investor with information that helped them track progress against their long-term goals? So we know that people are much less concerned about what the markets are doing this month or this quarter if they feel confident that they're still on track to achieve those longer-term goals, being able to retire when and how they want to, being able to put their kid or their grandchild through college. So those long-term perspectives that's an area where advisors can really help investors to stay focused on the long term, even when markets are choppy.
I know that you guys also look at how well people feel just overall about their well-being versus the year before. How's that going now?
Yeah, we do. So we asked people about their sense of their own well-being. We did see a decline, as you'd expect, given what we just talked about in terms of the markets, but it was really much more acute, again, among older investors. Millennials, for instance, about the same number of them said that they were better off versus last year. But we did see a big impact on boomers, right? So we saw 3/4 of boomers and older investors say that they were either the same or worse off than last year.
Wow.
And that's up from 58% in 2018. So I think generally speaking, younger folks are less concerned because they've got a long runway before they are thinking about retirement. But those who may be in retirement or getting close to it felt a lot more vulnerable and concerned about that than they have in recent years.
Yeah, that's troubling. Another thing I found kind of troubling is that it seems like from the survey that people don't have a lot of faith in advisors' technology, or they're not familiar enough with all the different ways they can contact their advisor.
Yeah, so I think, the wealth management industry as a whole has been a bit of a laggard when it comes to the digital and mobile experience revolution, really, that's happening in the consumer world. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I think, number one, they've been very dependent on the high-touch relationship with the advisor. It's an older demographic group of clients, so it hasn't been as big a focus. But I think firms are beginning to recognize that it really is important, and it's something that they have to improve. The expectations of investors, I think, are set by the kinds of interactions they're having with brands in other areas of their lives. And increasingly, there's more and more that people want to do and can do from their mobile device. And in many cases, only about 1 in 4 full-service investors said that they had used their firm's app over the past 12 months. And even those who are using the mobile channel are finding that the least satisfying interaction channel. So it's underperforming, the phone, it's underperforming online. So digital in general, but in particular mobile, is an area where firms in this industry really need to focus on understanding the consumer's needs and being able to deliver a good experience for them through that channel.
It's amazing how quickly that landscape's changing, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it really is. And, it's something that the industry has fallen a bit behind on. And I think that's what makes it so important for them to focus, because it's a moving target, right?
Yeah,
and it's and other firms are racing ahead with better and better capabilities. And again, consumer expectations are going up right along with them.
I'm going to ask you for 2 takeaways here at the end, because we have 2 different groups that listen to the show. Number 1 is from your study, Mike, what do you think the big takeaway is for investors? But then number 2, we got a lot of advisors that listen to the show. What's the big takeaway for them?
Well, I think it's almost 2 sides of the same coin in a sense. For investors, if you're working with an advisor today, thinking about what is that advisor doing for you, and what should you be expecting them to do? So some of the things we talked about earlier in terms of taking the time to explain things like performance and fees, helping you with setting your goals and effectively tracking your progress towards achieving those goals, being responsive, having frequent, meaningful communication. Those are things that you should be expecting from your advisor. And so if you've got an advisor who's doing that stuff for you, great. If not, maybe it's time you made your expectations clearer to your advisor, or even started looking for another one. And if you're thinking about working for an advisor, those are some of the things that you should be asking and probing for as you decide an advisor. What are they actually going to, what should your expectations be with respect to how you interact, and what value they're really providing for you above and beyond, helping you make investment decisions. I think for the advisors, it's really the same thing. It's, this is what your clients really want. This is what's going to keep them loyal, and it's going to keep them driving referral business to you. And so, again, if you're not doing these things consistently for your clients, you really need to be.
Well, and when it's harder and harder to find your client with all the different channels and people ignoring advertising more than ever, I think that's well spoken. Mike Foy, Senior Director of Wealth Intelligence at J.D. Power. Great work as usual, my friend.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks again to Mike for chatting on the shortwave. It's not shocking to me, OG, if you're an advisor and you're not really adding any value. It's no longer about information. You can get information from anywhere. It's about helping. Wisdom. Yeah, it's about helping people decide which information is relevant and which completely doesn't matter.
What's noise, and how to take that and distill it into, here's the few things that we need to do because of that information.
Yeah.
If anything.
Speaking of something, by the way, that's not a commodity that I used to think was a commodity, information about finance, OG, big time commodity. But luggage, not the commodity I thought it was. I used to buy all of my luggage at TJ Maxx.
The cheapest stuff you could get.
Absolutely. And
wait for the wheels to fall off.
Which was generally trip number 3.
If that.
Maybe 4. Yeah, my last piece of luggage, I actually it had 4 wheels, and I had to turn it around the other way so that I could use the 2 wheels that actually worked. Big thanks to Away for supporting Stacky Benjamins. Away makes affordable, high-quality suitcases that also charge your phone. What color's your Away again?
Blue.
Yeah, did you get the baby blue like I got?
What do you think?
No.
Thank you.
I got to tell you, though, I know exactly when my luggage comes out. I know exactly.
So does mine. It has a little tag on it that says OG.
Yours says Diva, #Diva in big letters.
One of those pink bands around. It's all sparkly like a unicorn.
Did you have that professionally done? Because Away doesn't add that stuff. I mean, they make it super sturdy, and then you have somebody else slap that logo on the side.
Glitter glue.
You bedazzle it.
I bedazzled my Away luggage. Rhinestones.
Because they cut out the middleman, Away is able to offer the perfect luggage made with high-quality materials that you can bedazzle at a much lower price. It comes in a variety of colors and 4 sizes. There's the carry-on. I've got one of those. The bigger carry-on. I've got one of those. The medium or the large. Away has designed the perfect suitcase to make your travel experience stress-free. Both of the carry-on bags, the carry-on, the bigger carry-on, have 2 USB ports and a high-capacity battery that allow you to charge your phone. I couldn't find my phone charger the other day. I had moved it from where I usually charge my device.
And so you went in your closet and got out your...
I still have my Away battery right out of the suitcase sitting here next to me. What's funny is I took it on our trip out west. What's that been now? 3 weeks? And brought it back, and look at that baby. Still fully charged. And in
other news, Joe forgot his battery pack for his next trip sitting on his desk.
Because it's sitting on the desk. I love it. It's ultra durable, lightweight, back to the luggage now, made with premium impact resistant German polycarbonate. I have no idea what German polycarbonate is, but this thing is rugged. Smooth ride in any direction, 4 360-degree spinner wheels that won't get stuck or break like my old luggage. Of course, there's a TSA-approved combination lock built in to keep your belongings safe. Comes with a lifetime warranty. If anything breaks, Away will fix or replace it for life. And here's what they're going to do for all of us stackers. For $20 off a suitcase, you just go to awaytravel.com/SB20 and use promo code SB20 at checkout. Plus gets free shipping anywhere in the lower 48 states. That's awaytravel.com/SB20, promo code SB20. So I think our takeaways here, OG, are number 1.
Be careful who you're following on Twitter and Facebook and blogging, because some of the smart people aren't playing the game.
A lot of the smart people not playing the game. And number 2 is have an advisor who's not helping you sort through the noise. Sounds like statistically, bad things might be happening to those advisors in the near future. She's back. OG, we're so happy that Laura Vanderkam coming back to the basement. I don't know that there are 20 guests I'd rather talk to than Laura Vanderkam. I'm always looking for ways to prioritize the important things in my life and figure out how to do things in a smarter manner. And Laura is somebody who studied that for a long time. Of course, her books, including Off the Clock, I Know How She Does It, What the Most Successful People Do Before Breakfast in 168 Hours, all bestsellers. Her works appeared in publications like the New York Times, Wall Street Journal. I first saw her in Fast Company magazine and in Fortune. She has a brand new podcast out called Before Breakfast. Imagine that. Let's say hello.
On brand.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's say hello to Laura Vanderkam. And coming down the stairs to the basement, it's our friend Laura Vanderkam. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me back down here.
Well, I wish you were busy. I mean, you have a new podcast. You have the new book. What aren't you doing right now?
I think those are the only two things I'm doing. So
yeah, right.
And visiting your basement, right?
That's right. Right.
Fills out my social calendar.
Whether you call it a productivity hack, a mantra, a guideline, you've talked to so many people that have been so constructive with their time over the last several years. I'm wondering, like I'm sure a lot of people listening are wondering, what thing has stuck with you so much? It's resonated with you so much that you've now internalized it into your day. Like more than anything else, is there one thing that somebody has told you or some lesson that you've learned that you've internalized over the last several years?
Yeah, well, I mean, the phrase I always have coming back into my head is that I don't have time really means it's not a priority. So anytime I catch myself saying I don't have time to do whatever, like, well, I know that's not true. I mean, I do have time. I may be choosing not to do it, but we shouldn't lie to ourselves. We can say I don't have time to floss, but that's clearly not the case. I probably just don't want to, right? The trouble of that, of course, is when other people say it to me that they don't have time to do whatever, I have to catch myself from coming off very glib of like, well, it must not be a priority. But it is always the phrase running through my head.
Yeah, you catch yourself sounding like mom. Oh, I see. You're not prioritizing this.
You're just not guess it's not very important to you.
But in your head, then that means you do that to yourself. You then, I would guess, then step back and go, is this really important or not?
I do try to figure out, what matters in any given moment. What would be the best thing for me to be spending my time on? What should I choose given all the various things I could be doing with my time? What would be most advancing me toward the life I want? And I'm not saying that I always do choose well. I have been known to fall into a pretty epic Twitter hole, all kinds of things that I just don't need to see or read or anything like that. But I can't tell myself it's not happening. I can't argue with myself that I'm somehow incredibly busy and filling all my time well.
My hole's gone from Twitter to Instagram lately. I have this,
interesting. When the rabbit hole switches, it's quite a moment. My rabbit hole used to be various online fora, I guess is the plural of forum, the discussion threads people used to have on various places. Of course, most of that is now migrated to Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, probably more Twitter and Instagram. I can't say I'm falling down the Facebook rabbit hole all that much, but I guess through Instagram, they still capture my time some way or another.
I try not to do it with Instagram, just too many political rants and too much stuff that I'm like, oh, please. I like you people so much. I don't want to not like you. I want to play the public snippet, the sample on Audible from Juliet's School of Possibilities for just a second, because this will lead us into, I think, a discussion about what the points are here in the book. So here is Laura reading from Juliet's School of Possibilities.
October's red and gold leaves blazed bright as Riley Jenkins drove south along the Garden State Parkway. Lovely enough, she thought. But even the fall colors failed to lift her mood. Nor could she summon the energy to be excited about her destination. Her firm's women's leadership retreat in the little town of Morris along the New Jersey coast. It wasn't that she resented working on a Saturday. Riley couldn't think of a Saturday she hadn't worked since landing her job with MB & Company, the consulting firm, after earning her Wharton MBA 4 years before. No, it was the opportunity cost of spending her Saturday with colleagues when she should be finding clients. After all, it was clients who got you ahead at MB, the most elite of all firms. It was clients who gave you power at this place she had long wanted to work. She remembered learning of its mystique in a casual conversation with a professor years ago, back when she'd been an undergrad at Indiana University, and waitressing to cover costs that her scholarship didn't. MB let you work with CEOs, prime ministers. You could solve their most important challenges and hence impact the world at a scale few other careers allowed. It didn't matter if you weren't yet 30 years old. You could earn copious cash while jetting around the world. In her first year, double what her staid Midwestern parents earned, combined at their peak. Stick it out to partner, and you'd take home millions.
She's chasing, this woman, Riley, seems to be chasing this American dream of I'll have all the money, I'll get all the riches, I'll jet set around the world, I'll help the biggest people. Is that a lie?
Well, I don't think it's truly a lie because there are, happy consultants out there, and it can be a great career. The issue is that she's not really doing all that well at it. She's not doing it in a way that is, in fact, helping her solve the world's big problems because she's so buried in her inbox and trying to respond to everything instantly that she doesn't have the space to come up with the great ideas that are the reason people are emailing her in the first place.
But she's but she's a super hard worker though, Laura.
Oh yeah. And this is one of the reasons I feel like I'm cheering for Riley. I mean, she's kind of, doing some rather horrible things in both her personal and professional life. And yet I still feel like I'm cheering for her because she's this just ambitious, hardworking woman who's come out of, not the Princeton and Harvard places that everyone else who's in her colleagues are, went to. She's just gotten ahead through sheer hard work. But the problem is at some point you can't do everything. And so, this has taken her for a ways, but once she's in management, she's realizing, well, I can't do my job and everyone else's jobs too. I have to figure out what's the right thing to do at any given moment. And she's just lost.
I feel myself and Riley sometimes because in her personal life with her best friend is upset with her. Her boyfriend has, not to spoil the first few pages of the book, but her boyfriend has said goodbye to her. Her boss has given her the ultimatum that she's probably not going to stick around there. She's disappointing everybody. And yet her inbox continually gets fuller and fuller and fuller with these people she doesn't really care about that need more and more and more from her. Like it's so frustrating. Who is Riley?
Oh, Riley is all of us. I mean, this is the thing with a fable, right? Is you try to have a main character that most of us can, at least to some degree, identify with. And you've nailed the problem right there, that the people she likes have actually given up on her, whereas the people she doesn't care about want everything from her. These expectations are sort of infinite. At one point, she looks at her inbox and decides that the number is kind of rising like seconds on a stopwatch, right? The sense of just complete overwhelm.
Where does she go from here then?
Well, she goes to a little place called Juliet School of Possibilities, which is a retreat location run by the mysterious Juliet, who is this, successful entrepreneur, happy mom, like all around calm person who seems to have just everything together. And when Riley shows up, she sort of latches on to her. I mean, first she's surprised that this celebrity type figure is hanging around at the retreat, but if she's there, Riley's going to latch on to her and try and figure out what are her secrets. Like, how is she, have a million things going on and yet seem to act like she has all the time in the world. And over the course of the weekend, Juliet shows her different visions of her life based on different choices that Riley might make. And so Riley realizes what she's going to have to do.
It's funny because even in that snippet, Riley talks about working Saturdays. So she's clearly putting in all the overtime that she thinks she should be putting in. She even talks about opportunity cost. When you use the term opportunity cost as an author, I mean, clearly Riley's already making some judgments, right? She's making judgments about what's more important, this thing or this thing. And yet it seems like there must be then, Laura, some in our everyday thinking, if Riley's all of us, there must be some misconceptions in the way we're weighing our opportunity cost.
Yeah, well, she certainly is. And what she says, the opportunity cost of spending her Saturday with her colleagues when she should be with clients. She's sort of internalized that whatever the clients do, I should immediately follow that, right? Like whatever they ask, do it immediately, because that's sort of what's been rewarded up until that point. But the hard truth is that isn't always the right answer. And I'm not even saying that this is like a work versus personal life thing. It's just that sometimes there are things that are flashing right in front of you that seem urgent, but aren't necessarily all that important. And you have to have the wisdom to know the difference.
I am a person that has been accused in the past of thinking that just working harder is the answer. And you have a great anecdote early in the book where she's learning how to chop onions. And she takes this onion, and at first she's bad at it, but she's going to be good at anything. So she rolls her sleeves up and she chops the onion better and chops it better and chops it better. And everybody else is staying around with a glass of wine while she's showing them that she's clearly a harder worker.
Yes. So one wonders, like, who at the dinner party is the one who's going to show everyone that she can chop the onions perfectly? But, this is her personality. She is not going to be outworked. And she asked to be shown how to properly chop an onion. And by gosh, she is going to chop that onion. So, there are certain personalities that are like this. But the truth is, once she figures out how she might wisely direct her time, I mean, she's going to be unstoppable, because hard work is great. Hard work alone is insufficient. Hard work accompanied with the wisdom to know what is the right thing to do at any given moment is where success is born.
Let's turn our attention to Juliet in the book, who is this mystical, fantastic woman, this great character who seems to have infinite amounts of time and energy for people like Riley that she barely knows. Who is Juliet?
I wish I knew her. Wouldn't that be awesome? She is very much a made-up character, but it is putting together many of the best traits that I've found over the years in people I have interviewed who are just incredible with their time. You know, I've written in some of my nonfiction about this executive I interviewed once, and this was early in my career. I'd sort of started our conversation the way I often do, like, oh, I won't take much of your time. You know, I was trying to learn about her secrets of astonishing productivity. And she basically just laughed. She said, Laura, I have all the time in the world. And, you know, what she, obviously she didn't. Nobody has all the time in the world. But what she meant is that she had chosen to speak with me. And once she had made that choice, that was what she was going to do. And she was going to give it her all. She was going to have a great conversation. She wasn't going to be racing off to the next thing. She wasn't going to be looking at her watch the whole time. And I think that's such a gift, to have enough courage of your convictions that once you have decided to do something, you just do it. You're not doing something else the whole time. You're not constantly thinking you should be elsewhere. There obviously needs to be a filter on what you choose to do. If that woman was choosing to do that with, you know, hundreds of people a day, that wouldn't work. But again, she knew that once she had chosen to do something, it was the right thing for her to be doing. And I thought that was pretty profound.
Clearly, early in the book, you have this I don't know, yin and yang of Riley, who's multitasking, working her butt off. She's thinking about 4 or 5 different obligations she has at the same time, doing none of them well. Juliet's doing just one thing, focusing on the moment that's at hand and doing nothing else, and seems to be handling it much better.
Yeah, she does. And Riley is just like, what on earth is going on? Because as Juliet is taking her around the school, and, you know, she's just meeting by chance various employees, and every single person Juliet is talking to, she has something that's like completely understands their career development, where they are, like what would be the right thing to say to them to make them very excited and motivated and like want to keep working. That's not random. You know, that's somebody who actually thinks about nurturing those relationships. Whereas one of the reasons Riley's on her way out at her company is that she's so aimless with her teams. I mean, she just wants them to do everything, and then it's never right because she hasn't figured out what's the right thing for them to be doing. So they're overworked, and they feel like they're not making a difference too. It's just the worst of all worlds. So there's a lot to be learned there.
I noticed that career, Julia, early on talking about somebody who works for her going to something that's going to clearly make this woman's career better. The woman's all excited, but Juliet isn't just giving her mindless tasks. She's taking her, I don't know. I feel like she's delegating, but it's always delegating with a purpose, where Riley is a sprinkler system.
Yeah. Well, she's, one of the problems is that Riley has no idea how to delegate. I mean, partly because I'm sure she's always felt like she can do things better than anyone else, which is probably true, but is really irrelevant because you can't do everything. So on some level, you have to choose. And at one point, you know, Riley is talking about all her unread messages, and Juliet says, yeah, I might have 24,000 unread messages in my inbox. Who even knows? But Kylie's looked at, Kylie's her assistant. Kylie's told me none of them matter, so it's all good. And, you know, Riley's just like, wow, you know, I have an assistant. I've never really thought about having that person look at my email, but why not? Like, why is her ability to look at every email instantly somehow a great career skill? I don't know. So it's, these are all skills we have to learn over time.
Well, I immediately wrote that one down, just so you know, Laura. I'm like, ask Tina to look at my email before I do, please.
Yes, please. No, and it's so, I mean, I wonder sometimes why people don't delegate more. And I think it's just, you know, fear on some level that other people won't do things as you do them, which is true. They won't. In many cases, they'll do them better. In some cases, they might not. But in some cases, it doesn't actually matter because that thing doesn't need to be done as you would do it. And you only have 24 hours a day. So we cannot do everything ourselves, and figuring out how to use the tools at our disposal, one of which is other people, is really how success happens.
Another great author we've had on the show before, Austin Kleon. I don't know if you're familiar with Austin and Steal Like an Artist. talks about that, about where inspiration comes from and using that inspiration, not like a thief, but like somebody who's riffing and making something your own and really paying homage to things. And as I read Juliet's School of Possibilities, I was thinking, this is my favorite way to learn. I learned so much more through this parable, but then I think back to the 1 Minute Manager. I think about the E-Myth. I think about, in my life, Raving Fans. I think about these different books that have impacted my life. I'm wondering, as an author, which parables besides Juliet's School of Possibilities have really impacted your career and your life?
Well, I wasn't necessarily a student of the fable genre. When my editors noted that they were looking to commission some of these, my business publisher is the people who did do some of like Spencer Johnson's books, for instance. And so they've got a lot of familiarity with the concept. So anyway, they sent me a whole library of them. And I really became a student of the fable genre. And some of them are definitely done better than others. But I've definitely found stuff like the Go-Giver series is quite good. 5 Dysfunctions of a Team is popular for a reason. I think that it really helps a lot of people get a sense of how they can work together and achieve great things. So those are some that have definitely, been great. And, for all people make fun of Who Moved My Cheese, it had an impact on a lot of people, clearly. And I would note that the sequel to it, which is actually published posthumously, is quite good on its own. It's got a little bit more, it's called Out of the Maze. Dr. Johnson had been working on it for a while, and then they took what he had and polished it and published it afterwards. And I think it's got some interesting insights, so people might want to check that out too.
I never even knew there was a follow-up.
There was a follow-up. Yeah. And I don't know if, where it stood, because he died, not too long ago. And I think his ending came relatively quickly. So I'm not sure what stage it was in at there, but they've done a great job with it. And so it's called Out of the Maze.
Well, I'm a slow reader. It takes me forever to get through books. I flew through this last weekend. I learned so much from Juliet's School of Possibilities. Where do we get it, Laura?
Well, anywhere books are sold. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, your local independent bookstore. You can check it out at your library if you want to save some money. So all great ways to do it. But I hope people will give it a read. And if you'd like to come visit me and talk about it, my website is lauravanderkam.com.
And I would be remiss before we let you go if I didn't mention the new podcast. Congratulations on joining the new podcasting community.
Yeah, well, So Before Breakfast just launched. It's a short daily podcast with a productivity tip. So hopefully people will build it into their morning routines. You're making your coffee, listen to a productivity tip, or you're waiting for the bus, listen to a productivity tip, and take your day from great to awesome.
It is awesome. What's funny is as we're recording this, you are number 5 in all of business. So I don't know
exciting.
I don't know if you've learned to watch the charts 1,000 times a day.
I have not. Now I'm going to have to go look.
I know, right?
But thank you for just sending me down another internet rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Anything I can do. Thanks for spending a few minutes with us, Laura.
Thanks for having me back.
Hey there, trivia nerds. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and enough of this trivia thing. It's time to debut our little mini podcast, Doug's Super Hilarious Joke of the Week. You too can revel in my incredible ability to bring the comedy if you just subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast. We'll have a trailer for that in just a moment.
A mentor of mine used to talk about the time box, and he'd talk about how you can either expand the box or you can make better use of that time inside of the time box. And that has always stayed with me, because the first thing we always want to do is expand the time box. But then you find that you're not as productive inside of that as possible. So as a leader, you already get that, I think. You get that it's not about the number of hours in the day. It's about productivity. And the same thing goes for your health and wellness. It's not fundamentally about what to eat or how to train, although those are important pieces. What MetPro focuses on is the time management piece, working smarter, establishing a game plan specific to your goals and your lifestyle needs. MetPro has a unique and important point of view on what true net worth actually means. Their experience helping CEOs and industry leaders meet unique challenges provides them with remarkable insight on anybody who wants to see a greater return on investment in their life. Angelo put this phenomenally well. Angelo Poli the CEO of MetPro, when he was on Friday, said it's like any investment. Buy your health, sell weaknesses. It's a powerful analogy. And here's what I like about what MetPro does that makes them different. They have a team of experts. So you have a coach who guides you through a personalized nutrition and fitness strategy and educates you on how your body responds to macro, micro adjustments to your fitness, your nutrition, your daily routine. So you're not just out there on your own with an app or some written instructions that your buddy's doing. You've got somebody in your corner who knows what they're talking about. MetPro's proprietary science, technology, and techniques have already helped thousands of executives and business leaders learn how to optimally manage their health and achieve their performance goals, regardless of extensive travel and demanding schedules. They work with people that already have a demanding life. They're making it easier by helping you clean up your health and wellness plan. And this whole idea is based on your metabolism, because your metabolism's always changing and adapting to your environment. Without identifying a starting point, it's hard to determine the right strategy. So they use metabolic profiling. That's what MetPro means, metabolic profiling. And it's a process that allows them to get a baseline to see exactly how your body's responding against a very specific set of variables. Imagine that. We're going to use science instead of gut feelings to figure out your health. Same way you would with your financial picture, right? Use numbers and stuff. MetPro's experts are trained to take those results and translate them into simple, actionable steps for what you should eat, how you should train, what your strategy would be. So follow OG, who's going through the MetPro program right now. It's been exciting listening to OG talk about OG. And of course, this dude's on planes constantly and cleaning up his lifestyle to make much better decisions when it comes to health and wellness. For your complimentary metabolic profiling assessment and a 30-minute consultation with a MetPro expert, head to metpro.co. That's metpro.co. Don't go to metpro.com. That's something different. metpro.co/SB. And that'll tell them that OG and I sent you, as Mom says.
Hey there, trivia fans. If you're here for today's trivia answer, wake up! We had no trivia on this podcast because I'm moving up from trivia. Here's a snippet of episode 1 of Doug's super hilarious Joke of the Week podcast. Welcome to Doug's Awesome Joke of the Week. I'm your host, Doug, and I hold the world record for the best joke teller in the northern half of Oakland County, Michigan. This is the show where I'll tell you not 3 or 2 mediocre jokes, but just one joke told remarkably well. Wouldn't that be great if I really made that podcast? That'd be funny. See ya!
Doug made a podcast. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Maybe.
Happy April Fools. Hey, let's throw out the Haven Lifeline. Get serious again, and we'll tackle some of life's most important questions. Our friends at Haven Life Insurance Agency, they put what you value first. And today, our friend Eric, we met Eric at the Detroit meetup. Eric said the 2 things he values most, OG, are target date funds and annuities. Clearly a guy who knows us.
He must sell them.
Actually, that is good to have that today for April Fool's Day. Fantastic. It's actually your family and your time. And the good news is, with all the additional huge fees that you're paying, with most target date funds and most annuities, not all, you'll end up out of your house and having to live with your family.
And have lots of time because you don't have any money.
Yeah. Use all your time at the job. But that's why they've made buying quality term life insurance actually simple and affordable. Head to stackingbenjamins.com/Haven Life now to get a free quote. You'll find the application is simple and online. You get instant coverage decision. Policies are issued by their parent company, Mass Mutual, who's more than 160 years old. And of course, as I mentioned, affordable prices and super customer support. Today, we're going to throw out the lifeline to our new friend, Royale. Say hi, Royale.
Hey, Joe and OG. This is Royale from Central New York. Been listening for about a year, and just like the rest of your listeners, have learned absolutely nothing. But there's still hope. I'd like to get your thoughts on my current retirement plan and saving strategy so you can tell me what I'm doing wrong. My husband will have 2 pensions, which we estimate will equal about 50% of his current income. We also have 401k and IRAs that equal about $250,000, but at our current level of savings, employer match, and modest compounding interest should end up somewhere in the neighborhood of $700,000 to $1 million in the next 12 years. We have no credit card debts and are currently making double payments to our car loan. We haven't worried about paying down our mortgage since we're planning to sell the house this year and downsize, but I've been putting all of our extra money into a savings account with the intention of paying cash for a piece of land to build on if we find one before we sell the house. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. What haven't we thought of? Do we need to put more money in retirement? Should I be using a Roth retirement vehicle through my employer? I'd love your thoughts. Love the show, guys. Keep up the good work.
Thanks for the question, Royale. And a lot there, OG, to take in. What do you think? Let's punch holes in Royale's plan.
The funny thing with this is that there's a whole bunch of stuff going on, but we have almost no data still. You know what I mean? Like a couple of pensions provide 50% of my husband's income. Was your husband a urologist and makes $800,000 a year? Or is your husband working on the line at Ford and makes $32,000 a year? Those are different things. Retirement planning is really about a function of how much you want to spend. You know, there's plenty of people out there who with Social Security and a few $1,000s a month pension and $700,000 in the bank will make a very adequate lifestyle in retirement.
Yeah. If you've got a very frugal lifestyle, 2 of those two pensions that provide that much, you know, initially $750,000 to $1 million. If you don't have a pension, probably isn't enough money.
But for some people, $750,000 to $1 million is, and you add, you know, a little bit of Social Security juice in there, you get a little pension. You know, the question isn't whether or not you have enough money. It's whether or not you can maintain the lifestyle that you want / are accustomed to with that amount of money. You know, if your pensions total, let's say $4,000 a month, you got another $2,500 a month from Social Security, that's $6,500. And then you've got $1 million in your 401k, you know, that's like another $3,000 a month, give or take. So you're talking about, you know, maybe $9,000 or $10,000 in income in the, you know, in your first year, gross income in your first year of retirement per month. But if your Amex bill right now is $13,000 a month, you're screwed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a lot of people who would say $10,000 a month is more than adequate. I mean, more than adequate. There's an article in, I think Financial Samurai had it. It's been out in different places, Wall Street Journal and stuff, about the couple that makes $500,000 a year and quote unquote doesn't have enough money.
But we did that story, a month ago about Cardi B finding it hard to live on $500,000 a year.
$500,000. I think she's like $500,000 a month or something, wasn't it?
I don't remember. It was a bundle of money.
You're like, it's all the same, isn't it? Once you get over any number above $500,000 in any time period is more than adequate. It should be.
Well, but remember, our takeaway from that is that she's got a lot of expenses that the average person doesn't have, right? Just because she's got, you know, these people she has to employ, all of these things that she has to do. Now, don't get me wrong. She also, I'm sure, enjoys herself. Giving her a little credit, taking her and comparing her to the person you mentioned, you know, working at Ford.
Mm-hmm.
Apple and orange.
It totally is a function of what you're spending. I mean, here are the things that I was thinking of. I would make sure that we really try hard to get into retirement without owing anybody any money. There's no law that says you don't have to have your mortgage paid off, but you know, it sounds like you're selling your house, you're going to downsize, but then you mentioned having some land, maybe you build a new one. Those are all going to be extra expenses, but if you can get all that knocked out in the next decade or so before you retire, that's fine. Same thing with the cars. You know, I agree. pay as much as you can on it and get those knocked out. I mean, you're really in that final push. So, being at 250 today doesn't sound like a whole bunch of money, but you're right. The power of compounding, if you're saving $4,000 or $5,000 a month, you're both maxing out your 401ks and getting some decent matches, it can turn into $750 or $1 million, depending on how the market returns. So really now is the time to be hyper focused on it. All the rest of this stuff is fringe things, Roth versus traditional, that sort of stuff. That's at the margin. I would be taking care of the big rocks right now. Like, let's knock out all the debt. Let's make sure that we're saving as much as we can. And then understand what other variables there might be on the back end of, whether or not you can delay retirement a year, if things aren't exactly right, that sort of thing. Or if it's a hard and fast, you got to be out at 62 type deal.
The successful planning, Royale, is always about beginning with the end in mind and working backwards to today. What's the difference between what I'm doing today and where I want to be? And what do I do then to bridge that gap? Now, just to answer a couple of your questions, which I agree with OG are kind of on the fringe, but not only making double car payments to that loan, I would also then begin building a fund. So I keep making those car payments to, from now on, buy your cars with cash.
Yeah.
Number two, I just like tax diversification in general. So without knowing more about your situation, knowing exactly how much to put into a Roth versus traditional and getting more technical about it, I just like having money in different tax pots so that I've got money that's pre-tax that saves me cash today, money in a Roth that's tax-free money down the road, and money for flexibility that's in neither. I like having all three. So if you don't have much in a Roth, I would start that. So those are two of the things. Not knowing how much the pension is compared to what you want to live on, I think, to OG's point, bam, is the linchpin to this whole thing. Thanks again, Royal, for the question. And by the way, you know what? Just overall, though, OG, 2 pensions, paying off the car loan, focusing on
$1 million in the bank.
Yeah, focusing on having a plan, moving in the right direction.
I agree.
Normally, we'd have a letter from the mailbag, but I'm looking at the clock, and unfortunately, we're out of time today. Thanks to everybody, by the way, who's left us a question, and we'll be back Wednesday to answer more of them. Last thing before we shoot this thing over to Doug to finish off today's show. Speaking of putting a cap on the end of this show, OG's putting a cap on the end of the first half of this year. So if you're looking for good help in your corner and want to get on the list of people he talks to this year about what it would take to add his team to your team, head to stackingbenjamins.com/OG for more on that front. All right. That's going to do it for today. Doug, man, take it from here. What should we have learned today?
So, what did we learn today? First, take some advice from Laura Vanderkam. Feel like you don't have enough time for the important people or tasks in your life? Maybe that says more about your priorities than your time. Second, from Mike Foy at JD Power, we learned that a good advisor explains why things happen and how you should react, if at all. If you're an advisor and you aren't shepherding your clients, get ready to say goodbye to them because the data shows they're ready to drop you. But the big lesson? Don't launch your new podcast without calling Jimmy Fallon first. Hey, how come nobody called Fallon? But not even Conan? What kind of huge podcast launch is this anyways? I mean, God, we got to make a huge splash. Where's the fruit tray in the green room? Wait, where the hell is the green room? We are not ready for this. Special thanks to Laura Vanderkam. You can find her site at lauravanderkam.com or through our show notes at stackingbenjamins.com. Thank you to Mike Foy from JD Power and Associates for joining the fun today. You'll find Mike at jdpower.com. This show was created by Joe Salsihai, produced by Richie Rutter-Reese, and engineered by the amazing Steve Stewart. Online, visit us on Twitter at @SBenjaminsCast or on our Facebook page. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and I'm a lot deeper than you realize. In fact, sometimes I just stand in front of my mirror and reflect. SB Podcasts may receive payment on the show from sponsors and guests in the form of books, giveaway items, discounts, or other remuneration. There's no way you would take advice from these dorks, but like Joe's mom always says, don't take advice from people you don't know. This show is for entertainment purposes only, and before making any financial moves, consult with a real financial advisor.
Welcome to the after show, part of the show that doesn't exist. I've been forgetting this over and over and over. This is no April Fool's joke. Just a good old boys, never meaning no harm. Remember that?
Sure where this is headed.
We did this a few weeks ago, and then we said we give a shirt, we give some swag to somebody under 30 years old that can get that reference.
Got it.
We had a bunch. Nice job.
Okay.
Stackers, once again, like they did last week, stepping up, showing just how brilliant this team is. But just before we recorded, put everybody in a hat. Kelly O'Quinn. Kelly, if you're listening, shoot me an email saying, hey, heard that I won, and you're taking home the swag. Gertrude will get you the code. But you've been listening to an interview.
You know who's one of the better interview listens around right now is Greg McCune, the Essentialism guy. Have you ever read the book Essentialism?
Mm-mm.
Oh, dude. Today. Download it today. Put on your notes to download your iBooks today. It's amazing. It's definitely one of my favorite books. That one and Stephen Pressfield's
War of Art.
The War of Art is. I tried to read Gates of Thermopylae. It's so hard. There's so many big words in it. I'm this is the same author that wrote little paragraphs. I want the 1-page life lesson. I don't want the
That's Pressfield also?
Yeah.
But back to Greg McCune, what's kind of the takeaway, or what's the big aha?
He's just good to listen to. Well, first of all, is he British? I don't know. I'm terrible with accents, as you know. G'day, Austrian. So,
but I hate it when Australians actually come to the basement. You use the Austrian joke on Australian people.
I had to do it.
It's so bad. And
I felt the eye roll from 10,000 miles away.
You're the person who thinks it's funny.
I'm sure she did too.
Yeah, in her response, she acted like she thought it was funny.
I didn't see the response, but he's just got some really good interview. The idea, just kind of like Laura's stuff, is you got to prioritize the things. You're making decisions, and the decision to go, hey, I'm going to say yes to everything, or the decision to be overscheduled, or the decision to not exercise, or whatever. Those are all decisions also, even if they're in the background. And essentialism is really about prioritizing the things that are important to you. I think one of the quotes in there that I liked was, you need to prioritize your life or somebody else will.
Yeah.
How many times do I abuse your schedule? You abuse mine, until there's a point, right? When you go, hey, I've got this other thing that trumps you. And because we've worked together a long time, it's not disrespectful. It's not, whatever it is, just is what it is. You're like, hey, I've got family in town this weekend. I won't be able to do this thing then. So we have to figure out a different way to do this thing. Or not do it at all, whatever the project is or something like that, and it goes to client relationships. It goes to personal relationships. It goes to, how many times you're pretty famous young man. How many times do people call you and ask you for help? Hey, I'm just thinking about getting a podcast started. Could you give me 5 minutes and tell me what to do? And you're like, dude, 5 minutes. It took me 747 episodes to figure out what to do. And I'm still not figured it out, right?
Maybe next episode.
Yeah. Or what equipment do I use? You're like, dude, that's not a 5-minute conversation. It depends on your setup. It depends on,
Well, and it's funny that you say that because, as you know, that's also the wrong conversation. There's a great podcaster, Lou Mangello, has a Disney podcast. I remember Lou on the main stage maybe 4 years ago at a big industry conference saying, asking what equipment to use is like asking Michelangelo which brush he used to paint the Sistine Chapel.
Yeah.
Oh, is that
we hardly suppose that this podcast is the equivalent of Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel.
I know. That sounded a little egotistical. I wasn't inferring that in any way. I'm just saying it's the wrong question. There are a lot of questions before what's the appropriate equipment.
Right. But you're not obligated to answer those.
No, right.
And if you do, you want to.
Well, and like Laura said,
but you can't.
Like Laura said, it's a value judgment. We don't link those enough. We don't take the time to step back and go, what's my priority here?
Yeah, you're buying it. You're buying something. You're buying or selling, and you get to pick.
So I got to listen to that. I definitely have to listen to that.
Most recently was on Tim Ferriss, but he's in other places as well.
Yeah, and I listen to a lot of Tim Ferriss when I run. The Audible that I'm listening to right now is Tony Hsieh's Delivering Happiness. And Zappos.
Doing a terrible motivation job, I can tell. I'm listening to Tony Hsieh's Delivering Happiness.
Why did that sound horrible? That sound like I was bored?
Womp womp.
It is seriously one of the best books. And it's already known as one of the best books. And I'd heard people tell me about it, that it's one of the best books, and I can't stop listening. It's absolutely gripping. I think
you feel a little Rage Against the Machine when somebody says, like, this is the greatest thing. And you're like, okay, yeah.
Yeah. No,
I'll get to it.
And I have to say, I mean, that book that book's been out for how long? It's been out for a long time. And I'm like, yeah, I'll get to that someday. And I finally at a conference had a guy say, seriously, it was my number one book on customer service. And I'm like, I love reading about good customer service. And so I started it, and it's phenomenal. Delivering Happiness is
maybe I'll get to it.
Clearly a must read. Yeah.
I have to tell you about my recent travel. So I was at an industry conference for an investment company that we use quite a bit. It was all media personalities and small group. And we get done on Wednesday, kind of 2:00, 2:30. And I fly to LA a ton. So I know that the flight I take home is the 5:50 flight to DFW. It's a Dreamliner because that's why I take it, because it's a big plane. And so it's the 5:50 flight, whatever. So I grab my phone, look at it real quick, and on your American app, it tells you what time they're boarding and what time the flight is. And the first thing I see is 5:05, and I'm like, cool, that's the boarding time. I'm like, wow, it's pretty early, but it's a big plane. Because sometimes they'll go like 40 minutes early for like those big 787s or something. Like, whatever. So a couple of people are hanging out. We don't have to go to the airport yet, so we go to have a cocktail. So I have one, have two. Keep going.
Oh, no.
And I look at my phone. I'm like, oh, it's 4:00. I'm in Santa Monica. I know it takes at most 45 minutes to get to the airport from here.
Oh, no.
7 miles. I can damn near run it, but not in the condition I was in. And so order up the Uber, say my goodbyes, finish my drink, go to the bathroom, go downstairs, get in the Uber. Guy's going, hey, you're going to the airport, right? I'm like, yep. He's like, what time's your flight? And I said, 6:00. He goes, plenty of time. He goes, what terminal? I says, Terminal 4. He goes, you know all this? I said, yeah, I have to take this flight a lot. He said, why don't you double check real quick, just to make sure it's Terminal 4. Because I'd hate to drop you off at 4 and it's really 5, whatever. Okay, fine. And I'm monkeying on my phone. I'm having a good time. The conference is awesome. And, I had a few pops at, 2:00 in the afternoon on a Wednesday.
We've established that.
I look at my phone and it says 5:05. And I'm like waiting for it to refresh the time of departure. I'm like, oh, I got it. That, because I don't necessarily need board at 5:05.
Oh, no. Plane leaves at 5:05.
And then it refreshes. Boarding at 4:30.
Oh.
It's now 4:15. And I'm pretty much 2 blocks from downtown Santa Monica going, oh, hell. So I kind of glance up ahead and I look at the Uber's Waze ETA. It says ETA 4:50. And I'm like, okay, 4:50 from the door. Like, that's what time he drops me off at. And I look at the gate. I got to go to gate 48 Bravo, which is the end of the terminal. It's not the first one, of course, not the second one, the third one, not the fifth one, not the ninth one. It's the one due south, right at the very end from where you run it. I made it. So from the time that we ended, I called American. They said, you have until 4:55. We'll close the doors 10 minutes before the plane departs. I said, well, can you call the gate agents, tell them I'm on my way? I'll be there. She goes, no, we don't have a way to do that. So I tweeted American, and I said, hold the plane, I'm on my way. And they tweeted back, they're like, we're boarding. It's 4:30. We're boarding. Hurry. So I called American back again, and she goes, where are you at the airport? Are you stuck in security? I'm like, yeah, let's just not worry about where I am at the present moment. Let's just focus on I've got until 4:55. And so those of you who know LAX, up the escalator, use Clear, which
saved your bacon.
If you don't have it, there's only like 8 people in line at pre-check anyway. The Clear people are like, dude, there's 8 people. I'm like, hurry. And then I made every mistake, had water in my bag. My belt went off at the, it never goes off. I'm smart enough not to keep water. Ran through 4:50, made it. Took 3 minutes.
5 minutes to spare.
Yeah. It took me 3 minutes from the time he dropped me off. He dropped me off at 4:47, 3 minutes from the door of the Uber to on the plane through security with Clear.
By the way, that kind of crap only happens when you've had a couple.
Well, I'm always pushing it right to the end anyway, because I don't, I have no interest in hanging out at the airport for, they're like, you need to be at the airport 2 hours before. I'm like, not me, But the trade-off, I read somebody talking about this. The trade-off is once or twice a year, you just have to be okay with missing that plane.
Yeah.
There's going to be a time where you're going to go, hey, I always get here at 7:00 for my 7:35 flight, and today's the day they only have one security line open. And you're like, well, looks like I'm not making it.
There it goes.
So, anyways, if you don't have Clear, get Clear. Actually, don't. Screw you people. The fewer the people, the better. $80 a year. It's amazing. If you travel at all, you have to have it.
Yeah, if you travel a fair amount. I'm liking my pre-check. But that
it saved us dude, when we flew home from Denver for spring break, there was probably, gosh, it's hard for me to estimate. If there were 400 people in line at pre-check for the 7:00 flight in the morning from Denver to Dallas on spring break, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, it was out the door. It was wrapped around the building. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of people in the regular security line. Clear, you just skip everybody. You're that guy.
When I was in Orlando for Podfest Expo, the regular line, they have a big sign that says what the expected wait was, and I think it was 55 minutes for security.
God bless America.
And I had TSA pre-check, which cut that baby to 15 minutes, but the Clear line was right next to me, and that was it was a super highway.
Yeah. Well, because you go up, you get scanned, retinal or fingerprints, and then you skip everybody in pre-check. Or if you don't have pre-check, you skip everybody in the regular line.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You still have to go through security. You still have to do all that stuff and get your bag checked and all that. But you skip the waiting part. It's anyway.
It's crazy.